Okay, so my audio was messed up on the first recording, and it's kind of a good thing it did because we got even more stuff to go over than what I recorded yesterday, but I'm not going to re-record everything. I'm going to leave in an intro and maybe the epilogue or outro, and hopefully this video doesn't look like the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. So here we are again talking about UFOs. Why are we talking about UFOs yet again? Is because it's all proceeding as I have foreseen. As Emperor Palpatine said, the DoD is going to be releasing a bunch of stuff, and we need to be prepared on how to answer it. So we have some things to go over, and let's just start going over them. And I'm going to go over how this relates to the interdimensional hypothesis. I mean, just for those who don't know, I don't believe UFOs are extraterrestrial aliens. Almost everybody, when you say UFO, they substitute unidentified flying objects in their head with aliens, extraterrestrial aliens, beings from another part of the universe. No, I'm saying they're demons. And for lack of a better term, as other non-Christian researchers would say, is that they are interdimensional, which demons come from a different dimension, so I go with that. If me saying they're demons turns you off, let's instead say that they're non-physical entities that produce physical effects in this universe. Okay? And they come from a different dimension, hence interdimensional. All right, this guy, let's see who this guy is. Oh, he's the former UFO program chief, and I believe he worked in the Pentagon. I'm going to put links in the description. So let's see what he has to say.
All right, and now for something completely different. The former National Intelligence Director is revealing a new government report on UFOs will be full of never before seen or heard intel.
Frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. We're talking about objects that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for.
Okay, joining us right now to discuss is Lou Elizondo. He is the former director of the Advanced Air.
So we're going to be going over that video next, but we're covering this gentleman first. So that gentleman was the former DNI chairman, I believe, or leader. That's the director of national intelligence. In my former defense days as a defense contractor, what I learned was if you're going to be taken seriously as a very important as an important agency, you're going to have 3 letters, not 4. So DNI has to be important because it has 3 letters. I jest a little bit, but that's not really too far from the truth. So it's not just some nut on here. And then now, so we're going to go to this guy who's not DNI, former DNI chief, but he is someone who worked with the UFOs in the Pentagon.
Space Threat Identification Program, a Pentagon unit that studies UFOs. Lou, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So part of the evidence apparently is going to show UFOs or some, they're just unidentified objects, breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom. How is that possible?
Well, I'll tell you how that's possible. They're not, they come from a different dimension, but they produce physical effects in our dimension. They're not aliens. That's how it's possible. But if you're not coming with a theory, my theory explains the data. But I'm going to assume this guy, he's just going to say, we really don't know. And I guess in a real sense, We don't know, but I don't with 100% knowledge, but I do, my theory, which is based on the Bible, I have something that fits the data without having to resort to saying this is not happening, this is a hoax. You're going to have to start talking about Pentagon officials, higher ups in the government, it just being a hoax. That's not plausible anymore. It won't be plausible anymore. But the problem is that with the conflating of every time you hear the word or the acronym, I guess, UFO, you think of extraterrestrial aliens. But all they are is unidentified flying objects.
Well, I think that's probably the crux of the problem, that we are seeing these, let's call them vehicles, if you will, that are incurring into controlled U.S. airspace, that are displaying performance characteristics that are frankly well beyond anything that we can either replicate or in some cases really even understand.
And why would that be? That's because they're made by spiritual entities. Okay, so again, this supports the hypothesis. Go see in the link in the description my interview with Ken Samples. So you'll start seeing things in UFO stories or contact stories or sighting stories where the UFOs don't always produce physical effects. They don't produce wind, but you can see them. They show up on radar. It's inconsistent with, they're doing things inconsistent with physics. They just disappear. Things like that. And what's that show us? That shows us they're not extraterrestrial aliens. They are demons, people. And I hesitate to say demons, and I want to say interdimensional, because when I say demons, and this is for my Christian audience, when you just say demons, even though I believe they are demons because they show characteristics of being demons when they're contacted, or when they contact, of not being truthful, of deception. And again, you would have to really get into the literature to see this pattern. So the reason why you sometimes don't want to just come out and say that is because then, you're just starting to get someone to accept UFOs, and then you're going to get even crazier on them from their Western materialist point of view. And that's kind of one of the things I kind of find interesting about this, is that in the West, and if I'm repeating myself because of as I said, this is the Joss Whedon cut, in the West, we're taken over by materialism. So what would be the purpose to doing this is what I think we should have in the back of the mind. If you are coming from a materialist mindset, you would rather thinking extraterrestrial or hoax is better than thinking the alternative. I guess what I'm trying to say is from what I've heard from people in other parts of the world, or have been to other parts of the world, is that you see more things you can't explain. Let's say evil spirits. I'll just come out and say it without any euphemisms. Evil spirits in the West don't want to wake you up to the reality that there's more than materialism. Then there's a greater reality. So there's going to be less overt activity. Why there's more and more UFO activity as the years go on, that I can't tell you, because I have no idea. But I'm sure there's a reason.
So when you're talking about that, you're talking about how these things are able to do things that we have no idea how it's possible, given the speed and the altitude and things like that, and the turns and everything like that.
No sound barrier, right?
I'm sure you've got the top...
I want you to notice this is from the DoD video from a couple years ago. You notice how it's fuzzy? And we're going to get into that in the Elon Musk tweet. This is pretty fuzzy, and I think that goes into our hypothesis.
Physics experts in the world working on this, can they come up with any explanation?
I think as we begin to look at this, we're beginning to realize that a lot of this really isn't breaking the laws of physics. What it's doing is really breaking our understanding of the current laws of physics that we are looking at. In essence, these things, if you look at quantum physics, there's a lot of modeling right now that suggests that a lot of this performance can be explained if you have a really deep understanding of quantum physics. And by the way, you're absolutely right. There's
Well, that's interesting. That's one of the first things I say. But I have an easier explanation. Is that they're spiritual entities. They're having an effect in the physical world, but these are not alien vehicles.
5 unique observations.
But before I say that, there's a lot of other stuff involved in the background, in reading, that this is just not a willy-nilly sort of conclusion I have. What you're getting from me is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay? There's this. I'm not giving you a PhD education on this at all, but just based on the literature, it runs deep and it runs weird.
That these things are displaying. One is instantaneous acceleration. The second one is hypersonic velocity. The third one is a bit of an oxymoron, but it's low observability. And then the fourth one is transmedium travel.
Low observability, that's kind of interesting. That goes along with the Elon Musk's comments. And I think that goes to what I'm saying is that they're not physical. But they are. They do have physical effects. And I think our interdimensional hypothesis makes sense of all this.
The ability to operate in different environments. And then the last observable is this, if you will, this weird positive lift or anti-gravity where you have these vehicles with no wings, no control surfaces, no engines, and yet somehow they're able to fly. And frankly, outperform some of the very best aircraft that we have in our inventory.
I can explain that. They're spirits. Or they're spirits producing physical effects. So a spirit doesn't really need to follow the laws of physics, I guess. Does it?
Unbelievable stuff. So when people say, "Oh, you're in that business," how do you explain these UFOs?
Sure. Well, my business has always been that as an investigator. I was an intelligence officer for the U.S. government, so my business was just to find the truth, whatever the truth is, whether it's a terrorism investigation or counterespionage. Yeah, we applied the same methodologies we did investigating terrorist, if you will, operations and operatives as we did with this. And the information is very compelling. It's real.
Yeah. Okay, it's real. Are they...
Okay, so all those who are going to poo-poo this for you, or maybe you're tuning this in and you think I've gone nuts, no, you can't. You're not going to be able to do that. I'm doing you a favor. And the sooner you take this seriously, the more you're going to have to come up with an explanation for this. We're going to need to be ready to make a defense about this. All right, there's aliens and so and what are the theological implications? Blah 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 blah. You have to be able to. This is going to be the next big thing in my estimation. And we just really got to understand that. So be prepared. That's why I'm doing these.
From another planet?
See how he immediately goes to another planet.
Well, I think it's too early to tell. The three options are that have been presented that it's our secret technology, but we've done a terrible job at coordinating the testing of this technology for decades with ourselves, which is highly unlikely. The second option is that it's foreign adversarial technology, which, if you were to ask me, would be a huge intelligence failure of this country because we've been technologically leapfrogged. Or the third option is that it's something completely different. If it's not ours and it's not theirs, well, then it's someone or something else.
I can't wait for this report to come out. Lou, thank you very much for joining us today. Interesting stuff.
Okay, it's not someone else. Okay. It's not another country. It's in that big, it's something else. Okay, obviously that's a bucket. So I think the interdimensional and the alien hypothesis are the main ones. going. Okay, so this is the video they reference. This is there. Everybody likes to use the footage from a couple of years ago from the DoD. Some of this we're going to hear again. I think we already went over why the no sonic boom, I think, is probably the most interesting thing here. But let's just watch it in its entirety so we get a feel for it.
Actually is a program that's been in place for a few years in terms of a task force that has been there under the National Defense Authorization Act. But as you correctly point out, Maria, there's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, Maria, we always look for a plausible explanation. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
All right, so he's doing kind of what in our conversation with Ken Samples, what he mentioned is that where he made the distinction between the UFOs and the residual UFOs, which is the vast majority of UFOs, at least according to Ken Samples, is that you can explain that by natural means or satellites or swamp gas. That's the classic one, right? Or I kind of say that in jest, but a meteor or something like that. But there is a residual amount, I don't know, 5%, 10%, something maybe a little less, of stuff you can't explain. So that's where that's what we need. That's what we're talking about. So when we say UFOs, when I usually talk about UFOs, I'm usually talking about the unexplained stuff, but that's where Ken Samples goes with the residual UFOs. That in his book, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, with Hugh Ross and I forget the other gentleman. That's where that comes in. So I think let's see where this ends up.
Can you tell us where it was seen?
Actually, all over the world. There have been sightings all over the world, and when
so UFOs have been seen all over the world for a long, long time now, going back to the 1800s.
Talk about sightings. The other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. And there's actually quite a few more than have been made public. So I think it'll be healthy for as much of this information to get out there as possible so that the American people can see.
So one of the things I've read in literature, I'm talking specifically John Keel, the Ken Samples book, Jacques Vallée, but I think I read it in the John Keel book, is that sometimes you'll get a visual. Some UFO sightings will be on radar, and you can't see them. Some of them you see them, but they're not on radar. There's a whole host of just interesting phenomenon. And again, so what I would say is these spiritual entities, they can do things as there's intelligence behind it. They don't want to, if they don't want to be seen, they don't want to be seen. If they want to be seen in a particular way. If they don't want to create a physical effect, they don't create a physical effect. Sometimes they create a physical effect. And that's why they're so hard to, like, if you're just looking for a purely materialistic something that doesn't go to a greater reality, you're not going to be able to explain this all. But when you step back, and this is kind of what Jacques Vallée does, you step back and then you can kind of and strip away some of this and start to look at the commonalities and look at this weirdness. And John Keel did a little bit of this too. And then I mention those two because they come to similar conclusions as us, but they're not coming from a Christian perspective. So I mentioned that is that if you step back, you see that there's a greater commonality with folklore and spirituality, and even Jacques Vallée sees similarities with other things. Okay, so let us see. Marco Rubio had something, was tracked down by TMZ of all people. We get quite the roundup today.
You're on that Senate Intel Committee, man. I saw you guys are supposed to be, the government is going to actually have to put out everything they know about UFOs to the public. I guess it's not.
Well, for me, the whole thing was this, and that's why we put that language in there. And that's, people think about space aliens. For me, is there's stuff flying over.
Whoa, let's see.
And no one knows.
Repeat that.
Look, I guess it's not.
Well, for me, the whole thing was this, and that's why we put that language in there. And that's, people think about space aliens.
He says they're not space aliens. Did I hear that right?
Well, for me, the whole thing was this, and that's why we put that language in there. And that's, people think about space aliens. For me, is there's stuff flying over military installations, and no one knows what it is.
No one knows. They're not space aliens. They're flying over military installations. No one knows what it is.
And it isn't ours. So for me, that's logical. You want to know what it is. I mean, it's common sense, right? If stuff's flying over the top of your most sensitive installations, and it's not ours, and no one knows whose it is, you should find out what it is and tell us.
I mean, are we going to get like the friendly aliens, you think? If you think, honestly, should people be worried? I mean, I guess that's a better question.
Well, I think the worry is there's stuff flying over our facilities and we don't know what they are. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I mean, that's the concern. Maybe it's got a logical explanation to it. But, you know, people want to know. I want to know what it is.
I mean, who's a bigger threat right now, do you think? I mean, people always talk about, like, China's a big threat, but shouldn't we also be worried about what's outside in the universe?
Well, I wouldn't take it one step at a time. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying that's what it's all about. Like I told you, I don't know. I don't know the answer to what it is, but it's stuff that's there. And people. So
you're on an intel committee. They don't even tell you what's going on?
Well, I think they tell us what's going on. I mean, there's stuff flying over the top of our military installations, and they don't know who's flying it. They don't even know what it is. So that's a problem. We need to find out if we can.
So just a quick question, man. Everyone thinks we're the smartest out there in the universe, but are the aliens possibly smarter than what we are right now?
Well, if they made it all the way here, they probably are. Yeah, they're probably more advanced. If they can get here and we can't get there, that tells you they're more advanced. But I don't know if there are aliens. I don't know if they've ever visited here. I'm not. You know, when you talk about that stuff, everybody gets, stigmatized about it. No one wants to sound weird. My thing is very simple.
No one wants to sound weird, but he knows he's on the Senate Intel Committee. He knows stuff is real. All right? So, I mean, if you made it this far, I'll just say, like, there's a lot of people who don't click on these UFO videos because it's just like, hey, I've gone off the deep end sort of thing is probably what they're thinking. I don't care. I don't know if they actually think that, or they're not interested. But again, we need to be prepared for this. Go watch the Ken Samples interview. Go read the book. Go read the literature, man. Go read John Keel's Operation Trojan Horse. That book is eye-opening.
We don't know what that stuff is that's flying over the top of our installations. Let's find out. Maybe it's another country, and that would be bad news too.
But let's just say, hypothetically, one last question, man. Hypothetically, if somebody comes down, there's aliens, Should Biden and should the government, should we try to be friendly with these folks, or
Oh,
should we
I don't
look at
know,
it
man.
as
I haven't think given this. We got so many problems going on as it is. That would be one heck of a way to top the last year and a half.
All right. He wants to go with the reporter wants to go with aliens. Maria Bartiromo, she, alien. The other Fox News host, aliens. That's like aliens. Maybe that's because that's what drives clicks. Obviously, if you start saying demons, like me, then you're really going to sound crazy to. Then you're really going to sound crazy to the materialist West. Okay, and then there's an article that popped up in the Daily Mail about a bunch of Tic Tac shaped. Let me try to close that ad. No, Google, you won't let me close an ad. A lot of Tic Tac shape stuff. There you go. A lot of Tic Tac shaped aliens. I'll post a link to this so we won't have to go over it. Just swarming like a Navy ship. So that's what's in the news, and I'm going to go back to myself from yesterday. All right. So last thing, Elon Musk had this tweet. I see a lot of followers. Strongest argument against aliens: camera resolution, UFO picture resolution, and he makes a good point. As cameras are getting better, the UFOs aren't getting better in resolution in terms of the picture quality, but that's because they're not physical craft. They appear as they want to appear. If they don't want to appear clear, they don't appear clear. But they do things like move around that are essentially wacky. I saw some sort of video on Through the Black channel where they had kind of an orb of squiggly light that moving around that was caught on camera. It defies. It was, in my estimation, paranormal, demonic. Something was going on, and I know this sounds crazy, but you have to shake yourselves out of a Western materialism mindset. We are moving. There was a great set of interviews years ago from On Issues, etc., the Lutheran show, about a Lutheran who went to do doctoral thesis in Madagascar and observed all these spiritual things like exorcisms and different manifestations down in Madagascar. And I believe I called him, but one of the things I wanted to mention with that is I think one of the reasons, and maybe I'm going to post that one day, one of the reasons I think he guessed why you don't see as much overt spiritual stuff in the West is because if someone is asleep in materialism, if the demons, if their goal is to keep you from knowing Jesus, why would they wake you up that there's a greater spiritual reality? But as we're moving into a post-Christian time, I think we're going to see more and more stuff. We're seeing more New Age stuff. We're going to see more cultic stuff, and we're going to see more UFOs. And I don't know how many we're going to see. I don't know what the future will hold, but people will know there's UFOs out there, and it will be pretty much confirmed. It's confirmed by our government already, and it's kind of weird. I was seeing on some of the internet boards today, people just dismissing it, but there's videos. The videos are released by the DoD, so there is going to be a certain segment of people who just dismiss it, and that's fine. I'm not trying to convince them otherwise, but for the people who know better, because they are a real phenomenon, we need to have answers, and I believe we do. Okay. All right. God bless. If you have any questions, if you think I'm crazy, hit me up in the comments and we'll try to hash it out. God bless.